Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me? Oh, I see some muted microphones, so maybe. Uh, I just sort of wanted to make sure I had a sound. Let's see. If there's anybody feels like in the chat window, just letting me know you can hear me all right. We'll start the session.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. That's
Okay,
great. I just didn't want to be talking into the abyss. It's
right.
great. Oh, thank you. All right, good. We have some good responsiveness. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning. This is a webinar about the services that the Vermont Department of Libraries can provide you through the ABLE library. So I'm going to sort of go through a few notes that I had made, and then we'll have some time at the end for your questions. I have Joy here with me and Josh, and they'll be helping me monitor the chat box. So we will work to answer all your questions. So the Able Library, I guess, and for those of you that were at VLA, some of this may be a little repetitive in the beginning. Up until our recent relocation earlier this summer, we used to be known as the Library for the Blind and the Physically Handicapped. And we went through an active process with our advisory board and our users to figure out a different name, if we wanted to change our name, the kind of politics around changing names and what that meant. I joined the staff here a year ago, but before I came to Vermont, I had my whole career long focus really has been about underserved populations, diversity issues, equity and parity in information access for underserved populations. And so when I got here, the name Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped didn't feel very contemporary to me. It was based on what I would describe as a deficit model, and I didn't think it accurately reflected the very vibrant and active patrons that we have in our service. So it was really important that we got a group consensus. And it's part of a wider national conversation. So really the trend or at least the contemporary trend, is that you name an institution or you focus on what an institution offers rather than a specific population or group that it attends to. So ABLE was a really good acronym for us, and librarians, we love our acronyms. But it was an effective acronym because it allowed us to focus on all the different formats we have. So that's A is audio, B is braille, L is large print, and E is electronic book. So we're the ABLE library, but also the idea that that acronym gives agency to our patrons. It's something that is positive. It's something that sort of leans toward a narrative that talks about resilience, that talks about engagement, that focuses on ability rather than disability. And we found that it's also really helped with our outreach efforts. So, for example, I was recently down in White River Junction and we trained 40 social workers about ABLE services. And the feedback we got is that name feels more inclusive. They noticed that people who may qualify for the service were more likely to sign up under the new name. I was fortunate to go to the national conference, which was in Nashville this past June and early July. And the ABLE Library was cited as an example of a positive name change, and we have these sort of breakout meetings where resolutions are considered and adopted, and it was used as an example to try to compel the national organization to adopt a different and more inclusive acronym. So, I just mention this because I think it's something that Vermonters should be proud of, and another example of how our state really does take the lead in a lot of these issues. So it was wonderful to be there and to share the work we were doing with all of our sister libraries. And so, for those of you that don't know, um, the sort of structure of this library, we are a branch of the NLS, which is the National Library Service, and that, of course, comes out of the Library of Congress. But also the state, our state, supports these services as well. So it's a split funded initiative. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about formats. Some formats are federally supported, some formats are state supported. And I will say, to Scott's credit, to Jason's credit, here at the Vermont Department of Libraries, there is strong support for these services. What I've noticed in talking with my colleagues in the region and nationally is that many state libraries are outsourcing these services. That raises some ethical questions. There are some states, Utah, for example, that is able to offer a very low cost alternative to other states around the country. They are able to do that because they use the labor system through their prisons. So it's an incarcerated workforce that is paid a very low wage. And for us, ideologically and conceptually, I think it really, again, speaks to Vermont's character that these services here are embedded and enshrined in a part of our long-term planning for our service model. And so several of our other New England states, Rhode Island, for example, has looked at, they now outsource their collections. I know Maine and New Hampshire are considering the same sort of thing. So it's just really, it's an honor and it's a pleasure to work in an environment that recognizes how important these services are. So I just sort of wanted to give everybody a little bit of context and to remind you that this is something that we all can be proud of, because these services also wouldn't exist without the help of our public libraries and our school libraries. You all are a really important partner in disseminating these materials, but also in increasing the awareness of these services for your own patron populations. And so I wanted to make sure I acknowledge how important our mutual and active partnerships are. And that's a big part of my job. I've been really fortunate. Many of you have invited me into your meetings to talk about what we can do for you on an individual basis. I am, of course, happy to do that for anyone who would like to invite us. We just had a great meeting up in Burlington at the Fletcher Free Library. It was a wonderful experience, and Mary was such a gracious hostess. And so we would be happy to show up and work with you. So we can call that a promise or a threat, whatever you're comfortable with. It's fine with me, but I will be there if you ask me to come. So the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is who is eligible for ABLE services. So there's a lot of ambiguity about this. I think it's very clear that people who have no vision or limited vision have access to it. But there's a broader range of populations that we can help serve and accommodate. So I sort of wanted to talk about physical barriers to reading, and that can be both long-term and short-term barriers. So for example, if someone is having rehabilitative services, they've had a shoulder replacement, or they have arthritis or carpal tunnel, they've had a surgery on their hand, and they can't physically lift a book. And for those of you who deal with large print, you know that those books also tend to be heavier and bigger. So it's really, those are qualified applicants. So even if it's a short amount of time, a month, 3 months, those populations can be directed to our services. And of course, reading is maybe one of the few things that they can still do and enjoy actively when they are going through their rehabilitation. Um, Also, things like repetitive stress injuries. So, if someone has, again, I had mentioned carpal tunnel earlier, but anything that has to do with a kind of physical thing, even people with, and I know this is going to seem strange, but if any of you have loved ones or you yourself deal with back problems, sometimes, reading a book, say you're trying to get through the Harry Potter series in large print. If you have a bad back, that's maybe not the best approach. A digital book sort of takes all that pressure off. And again, the other part of this that I think also gets overlooked is anyone who's on the spectrum of learning styles. So, for example, if you have anyone who has visual motor processing issues, if they're dealing with autism or Asperger's, it's a multi-sensory way of engaging with the text. So I always think of the first time I read Beowulf in Old English, and a librarian at my school, had suggested that I listen to the audio recording while following along. And it made my comprehension so much better. I also then did the same thing for Shakespearean plays. And, so if we think about anything that has to do with arcane language or anything that's multilingual, it really does help students of all ages access material better. Anyone who is, so this is also gets into IEP questions. So the state, the reasonable accommodation statutes happen at the municipal level. Schools are required to provide reasonable accommodation. What we have found is sometimes it's not that the municipalities don't have the will, but they may not have necessarily the financial resources. We're happy to partner with local libraries and school libraries to share whatever materials we have in service of the IEP, although it's important to note that we ourselves don't manage the IEPs or deal with the accountability issues around the IEP. We're a support service for those plans and services. But these are some of the things that I don't think people immediately think of, and I just wanted to highlight those because many of you at your points of service, particularly at the CERC desk or the reference desk, are probably going to have inquiries around this. And I wanted to make sure that you felt confident in providing a responsible referral. Another question we get is with the application. So the Able Library is now, you can search the Able Library of Vermont. It'll come up, or you can access it through the Vermont Department of Libraries portal. There is an application there that you have to fill out. As librarians, you have signatory authority. So it can be a social worker, it can be a doctor, but it can also be a librarian. If you yourself are uncomfortable signing the form, you can send it to us and you can reach out to me and I can sign the form. My wonderful colleagues here at the library. And I also want to take a moment to really acknowledge their efforts. This service is a pleasure to promote because of the hard work of the staff at the Able Library. So Sarah and Wendy do a wonderful job. They provide excellent customer service. If any of you have had the pleasure of working with them, I'm sure you can directly attest to what I'm talking about. There isn't a place that I go where someone doesn't bring up the great job that Sarah and Wendy do. And we're also fortunate to have the help of another library employee, Vance. He is learning the trade and he is doing great. And so, as I said, I feel really lucky. It makes my job really easy to promote our service because the quality is there in the delivery and implementation, which I can take almost no credit for. So I feel very lucky. The other thing I wanted to mention is our direct services to Vermont libraries. So I think we've talked about indirect ways. Many of you access our large print titles through Clover. So we are in that catalog. you can limit, I think, your search, but the way the algorithm works, right, is if you type in by format or whatever, most likely you're going to get a Vermont Department of Libraries book. We happen to be, just by virtue of numbers, the largest large print library in the state. But we do also offer a few other services for you. So, for example, you can be an institutional member of the ABLE Library, and when you sign up, not only will you get a talking book machine, you'll get an ABLE fan. You yourself can be, oh, look, I have two here. Okay? Supplies are limited, but I want you to act now. So we do have some nice swag to share with everyone. So that's just an example. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have these large print services. Many of you may be familiar with what we call deposit collections. These are usually rotating collections of around 20 titles. The feedback that I've been getting on the road is I just wanted to remind everyone that if you do decide to become an institutional member and you would like regular large print delivery, so the benefit for you all is, large print materials are usually more expensive. They take up a lot of space on the shelves. If you have a rotating collection for your large print users, that comes out of no cost to you or your operating budget. But the other part of this is we can customize those offerings. So, for example, if you have a lot of avid mystery readers or you have a lot of nonfiction readers, you can let us know and we will customize the deposit collection for you. So you can list your preferences for your community. By default, what happens is if you don't set up any preferences, it uses the popularity of genres to determine what gets sent to you. And I'm sure, as many of you know, a lot of times that is things like romances and westerns. What I will say is a bit of trivia. The most popular, and this is gender neutral, the most popular gender neutral genre by far is what they describe as spicy romance across the board. So anyway, I don't have much experience with spicy romances, but I can tell you that they are very popular. So yes, it's space saving, it's cost saving, but it's also a way to help customize services for your unique patron groups. And again, Sarah and Wendy will most likely be the people you work with to help customize those collections. We're happy to do that. Also, when you start the service and you make your selections, you're not stuck with that pattern for the rest of the time. You can call us up and we can make changes and alterations for you. A few other things. We also have a described film collection. And described film is really useful for programming. It works very similarly to closed captioning. And we offer that again in two ways, as single titles or as deposit collections that we would send to you. Right now, they're sort of based on genre. So you would say, oh, could you please send us 6 comedy titles or 6 dramas? And that's how we would organize it. All the offerings are searchable. The ABLE has its own catalog that you can peruse. So you can make individual requests. You can do any sort of title requests with us. And again, that can be done through Clover, or that can be done just by calling us directly, and we will fill the order for you. The talking book machines. Okay, so again, I came with props today. So many of you may be familiar with this. One of the initiatives that we're looking at in 2019 is putting a talking book machine in every public library in the state and offering trainings by county to help orient your staff to talking book machines. And again, I will go into individual libraries and meet with staff to provide any training we can. And people will sort of say, well, why do I want that? I guess the idea is that if someone in your community comes to you with an issue related to their talking book machine, you could literally put one right in their hands and take the machine that's having a problem and send that to us. that patron gets served and you helped do it, and it's instantaneous. There's no sort of lag time or anything on the service part. So that's just one way we can help you. I did also bring, oh, well, of course, this is some new large print titles we got. This happens to be, I guess, a searing biography about Kate, the Duchess of York here. Or is she the Duchess of York? I think so, but I could, if there's any Anglophiles out there, you can type into your window box and correct me. But I just sort of wanted to bring these things to show you. The other part is site visits and consultations. So outside of services, my other role here is consultant for special populations. So special populations is a broad term. It's also kind of interchangeable with underserved. If you have an issue or question about an emergent population or a population you might not know how to do collection development for, if you have questions about ADA or accessible models, I'd be happy to come in and consult with you. And, you know, again, I'm not an authority figure. My role really is to give you whatever advice or perspective or resources I can that will help you make the best decision for your communities. So I'm happy to do that at any time. The other thing is referrals for local patrons. So if, for example, you find yourself in a situation where you really can't provide direct services to someone coming in and making an inquiry, we are happy to accept referrals from libraries. Just have them contact us directly, and we'll work with getting them set up with whatever they need. We'll talk them through whatever processes they might have. So the other part of this is the digital books. So I showed you a player. We offer digital services through two different streams right now. One is through the digital book player with cartridges that look like this. And again, this is all direct mail. This can come to you as an institution, but this can also come to everybody's homes directly. So and it's all free matter for the blind. There's no cost associated with this. This is part of the federally funded program. So this is nationwide. We have, many of you know in your own work, we have seasonal residents, people that leave Vermont for, I can't imagine why, leaving Vermont for the winter, for warmer climates. We still are able to continue a quality of service for them wherever they might be in the country. So just to sort of keep that in mind. The other way, and the more increasingly popular way, is through the NLS service called BARD. So BARD is an acronym again, but I also think it's a reference to oral storytelling, sort of very deliberately. And BARD Web is an application you can put on a computer, you can put on a smartphone, you can put on a tablet device, and each individual user can put their account on up to 5 machines at a time. When you sign up, some of the issues that come up with the BARD app, of course, are issues of access, right, and socioeconomic ability to attain devices that work or map with BARD. And so we're very aware of that, and I'll talk a little bit about options for economic barriers. So, for example, not everybody has a home computer and a smartphone and a sort of tablet device. Of course, many do. And, you know, that's sort of where I notice when people talk about sort of the technological or digital divide, I think part of what's missing from that conversation a lot has to do with economic access. So up in Vermont, this is an issue in certain communities or with certain populations, and there are ways to help accommodate that. The BARD app tends to work better if you load it onto a personal computer and then your devices, rather than the other way around. We don't really know why. It's just borne itself out through trial and error, helping people. The other thing I would be remiss not to mention all the wonderful NGO partners we have in the state. We are so fortunate to have the support of both government entities and non-government entities. So for example, VAVBI offers direct training for anyone with low or no vision. They will come in, they'll teach them how to use Bard, they'll help them get it on their computers. So Sarah and Wendy and I can help you, but also if you have an existing relationship, um, Dale is the same. That's also a service here by the government. They also provide training and assistive support. Um, so I just sort of wanted to make sure I took some time to acknowledge other people that can help you in your community. If VAVBI is more accessible for you, they are well versed in this. They do a great job, and they really do, again, help us provide continuity and consistency within our own service model. So, and we're very fortunate to have those relationships. And some of you may have them in your own communities, and of course, I would encourage you to strengthen and support those. The other thing I wanted to mention, if there is a need for a title, for a topic, for a genre, we have a collection development budget here. You can make direct requests to the Able Library. So for example, there was the Mosher book, Stranger in the Kingdom, which was sort of popularized and then made into a film. Well, now it was a while ago. But we didn't have that book in large print, and we didn't have that book in a digital format. There was a book club who was looking for that title, and we found out sort of after the fact that there was this sort of gap there. That would be a perfect example of where you can just call us up and say, oh, in our community, we're looking for this. We are really fortunate here to have a local talking book program. Vermont is, of course, I don't have to tell you, but just to highlight, Vermont is a very literate state, but it's also a state that hosts and houses a lot of authors. We're really lucky to have a very open and available literary community here. And so we have found a lot of great outreach opportunities through our local talking book program. And the studio here does partner with other agencies. So you may hear, for example, there's this popular podcast that comes out through the Humanities Council and VT Digger and the Vermont Historical Society. So if you listen to the very end, you'll now hear things like recorded at the Able Studio at the Vermont Department of Libraries. And so that's part of our partnership to increase digital access, but also we record local books of local interest. So that wouldn't necessarily get a commercial recording, and we're very fortunate that we have authors coming in to read their own books. This past spring, we had Burr Morse in our studio to record one of his titles, and it was really wonderful, and that program is growing. We currently have 4 sets of volunteers who record material for us, and that material is mastered professionally down at the Perkins School in Massachusetts. And so it's a wonderful service we can provide. So if, for example, there is a title that is important in your community that hasn't been put in large print, that there is no digital copy of, if you let us know, we will put that in our queue and we will work to get that book made digitally available. The one caveat here is that the audience is connected to copyright protection. So it couldn't be a title for your general audience. It would have to be a title for qualified able users. So for example, if there was an accommodation, again, the book club is a perfect example where commercial products existed, but there was this gap for someone with an identifiable need. That sort of space there, in legal terms, it's called a penumbra. It allows us to step in and provide that service. So we couldn't necessarily do it for the general public, but we can do it for specific audiences who are participating in a public event or service. So there's kind of a little mitigation there. I just sort of wanted to make sure that was clear. The other thing that I would, again, and it's a real credit to the state, if there is something that we cannot provide but is in this realm. So, for example, we had an inquiry recently around magnifying devices. We have a very small collection of magnifying devices we're happy to circulate. But for people that need a more permanent solution or something that the focus of this service is on vision. So sometimes we'll get questions, for example, about hearing impairments. And because of our formats and because of our mission, hearing impairments aren't a central focus. Sometimes those are part of like a bundle of issues that an individual may have. But the idea is that if someone is, say, having hearing issues, they are most likely sighted, so they can read and access text. Of course, there are cases where people are having issues with their vision and their hearing. And that's when we really help. Our close relationship with the Assistive Technologies Department, which is located in the Waterbury complex, is so important. We partner with them regularly. We will be working with them, I think, in the coming year to offer another continuing education workshop or webinar to talk about the ways that we can help you. They not only have a wonderful collection of manipulatives and resources in this area, they also have wonderful programming ideas and training opportunities. And that's been a very nice, natural relationship. Representatives from that department sit on our board. And again, it's this idea where we're trying to be mindful to provide a continuity and a connection among these services, really to help not only your patrons, but to help you as an institution. So that when someone comes to you, you can say, oh yes, these are the services we provide. We have large print titles. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we can refer you to this state agency, and they will help you, and they will work with you. And really, I think I have the pleasure of doing the reference workshop trainings with my colleague April. What we notice is, or what I think sometimes gets missed in the reference world is literally providing someone with a connection to a service, a responsible referral is a reference exchange. So the onus is not on you to have all the answers. The onus is not on you to have all these services in your library where resources are scarce, but you can responsibly connect people to institutions that are allied, that are there to help you and them. And so if I just sort of, even as part of this workshop, if you transmit that to your staff, I think that that's also can be a practical matter, but also a source of relief. Many of you have expressed concerns that you're not doing enough with assistive services, and this would be a way to kind of help with that. I think, I'm wondering if there was anything else. Just let me check my notes here to see if there was anything I wanted to mention. I feel like I have been talking for a long time. Oh, great. I think we have a question here. I don't even know if I can read that.
How does a talking book machine differ from a daisy reader?
Oh, okay. So daisy reader, that's a great question. Daisy readers...
Could you read the question louder, just in case they didn't...
I'm sorry. Yeah, on the chat window, someone's asking about the difference between the digital talking book machine that I have here and the commercial product daisy readers. So daisy readers, that's you... The means of conveyance is different. So a daisy reader has a different file, it has a different structure. Daisy readers often will read CDs, for example. We don't deal with any compact discs. We deal with what they call cartridges. So they sort of look like that. In essence, they provide the same service, But Daisy readers are a commercial product rather than a federally supported program. So you can use those to supplement. For example, our neighbors to the north, Canada, they use Daisy readers as part of their services to the visually impaired. For whatever reason, the U.S. Library of Congress went with this model. And I guess that's the other part too. It's kind of a Daisy reader may have broader access, but I will say that the holdings for Daisy readers, BARD is really an extensive and wide-ranging catalog. And BARD, again, is searchable. You don't have to be a BARD member yourself to see what the holdings are. So you can help patrons, if they have a BARD account, access that. Just a few weeks ago, we helped a woman get titles. She was interested in learning how to yodel. We found her several yodeling titles. I know, now, don't all go out there and request yodeling books. We'll be in trouble. But and then later, she had such success with that. Now she's on to the ukulele. So we are thrilled about that. There's also a broad foreign language contingent that we have in support. Many of you have francophone populations here in the state, and it is, I know, challenging to find new materials for them to read in French. We're very lucky. We have partnered with our sister libraries down in Louisiana and over in Maine to help bring some French language titles to Vermonters. Are there any other questions or comments here?
So
Sure.
when you mentioned that people can request a recording be made of something that they don't have access to, how do they prove that the person fits into that category?
Sure, that's a great question. So Joy was asking, just kind of revisiting this idea of making a request and having that be copyright appropriate for us. Usually the easiest way to do that is the patron you are making the request on the behalf of is a member of the service. So they filled out a question, they're on the NLS database as an active patron, and then that creates the rationale or the warrant for us to produce the title on their behalf. Thank you for that.
We have another question.
Oh, sure. I cannot.
How can I search for what talking books are available?
Great. So there's two ways you can do that. If you go to the Able Library webpage or the Vermont Department of Libraries webpage, you can find the Able Library. On the top third of that, you'll find a hyperlink. And I think, Josh, we made it something very obvious, like search the Able Catalog, or we hope it's very obvious. If you're having trouble finding it, please let us know. And again, if you call our number, Sarah and Wendy can also walk you through any of these processes. The other way to search is through the NLS BARD catalog. And as I just mentioned, you don't have to authenticate to search. You have to authenticate to request. But if someone came into your library and said, oh, I'm a member of BARD or I'm part of the Able Library, you could go right to our catalog and help them. Or you could go right to the BARD catalog and help them. If they happen to bring their computer, and this is really what's amazing about it, if they happen to bring a computer in and they're logged into BARD and they click on a title, it will immediately start to download onto their computer. So, and then the third way, which is a little more circuitous, is through the Clover Catalog, which will have all our large print offerings. I mentioned earlier that the state provides some funding and the federal government provides some funding. The state of Vermont pays entirely for the large print collection that we offer. I may have also mentioned that many states are consolidating and reducing services. The state of Vermont is committed to the large print collection. Again, several of our sister libraries don't even have large print or Braille offerings for their patrons. And those are the formats that the state supports in conjunction with the federal support we get for the digital talking books. Oh, thank you, Josh. So Josh has pulled up the basic search window. for the what we used to be special services unit for the ABLE library. So you can do a basic title, keyword, author search here. I think you can even limit by format or whatever. So this gives you a direct sense. Does that help answer your question? Just want to make sure we're... Okay, great. Is there anything else anybody had?
I think someone was just, what kind of media do the cartridge count as?
Oh, that's a good question. The digital book cartridges, I guess they would be I think they're searchable for under digital books. So they often have the prefix DB, which means digital books, and LP is the prefix for large print. So you'll notice those two title variances in the catalog when you're looking at the call numbers. The other thing that's frustrating for librarians is it's not a browsable collection in the traditional sense because it's organized by serial. So it's organized by how the titles come into us. And then there's sort of given a number based on how they came into the collection. So there's no, outside of the catalog, there's no title searching. So it can be frustrating. Some folks will come in and say, oh, I just want to browse what you have, and then are in for a surprise when they sort of see thousands of these blue cartridges with numbers and not much else on them. But the catalog is really the best way to search through conventional library science methods. I hope that's helpful. Any other related questions? Well, let's see. Looks like we have some.
If someone has questions about ABLE library related questions, where should they start? Who should they contact first?
So there's an email address and a phone number for the ABLE library. Again, that's on the landing page. Sarah or Wendy or myself answer the phones, and all of us are equipped to answer whatever question you might have. So don't feel any pressure to have retained everything we sort of talked about today. But if something sort of strikes your mind, and you can always reach out to us, and that's what we're happy to do.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Would the talking book machine be appropriate for someone with something like arthritis?
Yes. So,
So
again, this goes, I appreciate that question. Arthritis is definitely a qualifying condition. So they could fill out an application, you can sign the application, we can set them up with a talking book machine. The interface is very straightforward. It's simple buttons. The buttons are braille. They are very easy to push. There's no kind of flips or switches. It's just, they can even use a stylus for this as well if they have limited mobility with their fingers. So yes, that would be definitely a qualifying condition, particularly as the cold weather comes in. I know that that can be very aggravating for different types of arthritis. So that's a great question. Thank you.
do they get trained in how to use that when they get one?
We can provide training. There's a welcome packet that comes, but also the idea is when we roll out the program, if people are interested in getting a talking book machine to have in store at their public library, we would plan to then offer a county by county training, and you can come and get training as part of continuing education, or again, you can come to your libraries and train your staff.
So a librarian could come here and meet.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A librarian could come and make an appointment with us. And again, I mean, so Wendy and Sarah literally repair these machines. So they know them from not only from a use standpoint, but also from a mechanical standpoint. So, and they function like small computers. The unit price is about $300 per machine. But again, this is all free services that are provided through the NLS. And I just want to make sure if there's any other chat questions. Well, I really appreciate that everybody took the time today. I know September and October is so busy here in Vermont, so I really appreciate the audience that came. We have recorded this session and we'll put it with our other sessions. If someone, if you're talking to a colleague or you have a coworker that might be interested in this, they can watch it asynchronously. And again, if there's individual questions or needs, we're always happy to answer them if you call us or send us an email. And I really thank you for your time and for your patience and for tolerating my yammering here. Oh, we have another one. The suspense. It just says someone's. Let's see.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for attending. And I'll look forward to seeing everyone around the state. I will be presenting with some of my colleagues about special services at NELA if you're going to be there.
So that's where the webinars can be found, recorded.
Oh, sure. So do we have a YouTube channel or?
So the webinars that we've done are available. We have a YouTube channel, but you can get to that if you go to the CE section of the website. There is a link in the menu for the recorded webinars.
Great. Let's see.
You're welcome.
Oh, perfect. All right. So I want to wish everybody a great end to your week, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you around town, as it were. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye for now.